#AI in Tech News Daily. Anthropic's making drugs, nuclear startups just leveled up, your gadgets are about to cost way more, and we're breaking down everything from ZYN pouches to dying EV dealerships, plus the AI glossary you actually need and why browsers are ditching search. 7 stories that'll reshape your week. Stick around for the one that'll blow your mind, ***. Anthropic wants to develop its own drugs. Anthropic just made a move that signals where AI is actually heading next, and it's way bigger than another chatbot update. The company announced Claude Science this week, essentially an AI workbench that consolidates fragmented tools and datasets into one unified environment where scientists can actually work. This isn't just about making research easier, this is Anthropic signaling that it's moving beyond being a language model company into becoming an infrastructure play for entire industries. And if they pull this off, drug development could be fundamentally transformed. Here's why this matters. Drug discovery is notoriously slow and expensive, often taking over a decade and billions of dollars to bring a single compound to market. Most of that time gets wasted on tedious data wrangling, literature reviews, and manual analysis that AI is genuinely good at automating. By creating an integrated workspace where Claude can pull together disparate datasets, generate visualizations, and help scientists reason through complex problems, Anthropic is removing friction from the most expensive part of the pipeline. They're not replacing chemists, they're making chemists exponentially more productive. That's a business model that actually creates value. The broader implication here is that we're watching the AI industry mature. We've moved past the phase where companies compete purely on model size or benchmark scores. Now the winners are those building vertical solutions, tools tailored to specific industries where AI can solve real, expensive problems. Anthropic's move into science tools suggests they're thinking long-term about becoming essential infrastructure rather than chasing the next viral feature. If they can deliver on Claude Science and eventually help accelerate drug discovery, they're not just building a better product, they're potentially saving lives while creating a defensible moat that's much harder to compete against than raw model performance. 3 nuclear startups hit a big milestone. Why it matters and why it doesn't. #nuclear startups hit milestone, but don't pop the champagne yet. 3 nuclear startups just hit a major milestone with new reactor designs coming online, and on the surface, this looks like a genuine breakthrough moment. These companies are racing to build smaller, modular reactors that could theoretically power data centers, manufacturing plants, and eventually homes without the massive infrastructure requirements of traditional nuclear plants. The timing is perfect because AI companies are absolutely desperate for clean, reliable power. Training large language models and running inference servers consume staggering amounts of electricity, and nuclear energy suddenly looks like the answer to their prayers. That's why this matters. We're watching the convergence of 2 massive industries finally meeting a real need. But here's where we need to pump the brakes a little. These reactor designs coming online are important proof of concept moments, sure, but they're still operating at relatively small scales. The real challenge isn't building a reactor that works in theory, it's manufacturing them reliably, affordably, and fast enough to actually impact the energy crisis. We're talking about regulatory hurdles, supply chain complexities, and the simple fact that nuclear projects historically run over budget and behind schedule. These startups are still years away from delivering energy at the scale that would meaningfully reduce AI's carbon footprint or solve the broader power crunch facing data centers globally. The broader implication here is that we're finally seeing serious capital and engineering talent flowing towards solving the energy problem that's been holding back AI development. If even one of these companies succeeds at scale, it could fundamentally reshape how we power the digital economy. But we shouldn't mistake progress for arrival. These milestones are real, they're worth celebrating, and they signal genuine momentum. Just don't expect them to solve the energy crisis by next year. This is a multi-year play, and the real story will be told in 2028 or 2029 when we see whether these designs can actually scale. All your favorite gadgets are getting way more expensive. Again. Your wallet is about to take another hit, and this time there's no escaping it. We're looking at a perfect storm of rising prices across every gadget you own: phones, laptops, gaming consoles, and the culprit is something most people didn't see coming: artificial intelligence is eating up all the chips. The semiconductor industry is facing unprecedented demand as companies race to build AI infrastructure, and that's creating a cascading shortage that's trickling down to consumer electronics. What used to be a temporary supply chain hiccup is now a structural problem that's reshaping how tech companies allocate their resources and price their products. Here's what's actually happening behind the scenes. AI chips require cutting-edge manufacturing processes, and there's only so much production capacity in the world. Companies like Nvidia and AMD are prioritizing these high-margin AI processors because that's where the real money is right now. Meanwhile, the chips that go into your everyday devices, the processors for phones, the graphics cards for gaming, the memory for laptops, are getting squeezed out of the queue. Manufacturers have to choose between investing in AI chip fabs or maintaining capacity for consumer products, and the economics are crystal clear. When you can sell an AI accelerator for thousands of dollars versus a smartphone chip for a few bucks, the choice is obvious. The bigger picture here is that we're witnessing a fundamental shift in the tech industry's priorities, and consumers are footing the bill. This isn't just about paying more for the same device, it's about what this means for innovation, competition, and access to technology. If only wealthy consumers and enterprises can afford cutting-edge gadgets, we're creating a two-tier tech ecosystem. The companies banking on AI dominance are making record profits while everyone else watches prices climb higher. This is the real cost of the AI revolution, and it's hitting your pocket right now. The FDA ruled that ZYN pouches are safer than cigarettes. That doesn't mean they're safe. Hashtag ZYN pouches and the FDA's controversial green light. The FDA just gave nicotine pouches a major stamp of approval, and it's raising serious questions about how we regulate addictive products in the age of modern technology. ZYN pouches, those tiny white packets that dissolve under your lip, can now be marketed as a reduced-risk alternative to cigarettes. This is huge because it's the first time the agency has allowed such a claim for a nicotine product that isn't a traditional cigarette or pharmaceutical nicotine replacement. But here's the catch: safer than cigarettes doesn't mean safe. It's a critical distinction that's getting lost in the headlines, and it reveals something troubling about how we're approaching harm reduction in 2026. The business and tech angle here is fascinating. ZYN's parent company has been aggressively marketing these pouches through social media, influencer partnerships, and targeted digital advertising, basically using every modern tool available to reach younger demographics. The FDA's decision essentially validates their entire business model and gives them a competitive advantage that traditional tobacco companies can't match. This creates a weird incentive structure where the most technologically savvy marketing wins regulatory approval, not necessarily the safest product. We're watching a company use sophisticated data analytics and digital distribution to capture market share in an entirely new category that barely existed 5 years ago. The broader implications are genuinely unsettling. This decision sets a precedent for how we'll regulate emerging nicotine and potentially other addictive technologies going forward. If a product is less harmful than an existing harmful product, does that justify its existence? What happens when AI-driven personalization makes these pouches even more addictive? We're essentially creating a regulatory framework that accepts harm reduction as victory, which might feel pragmatic until you realize we're locking millions into a new form of nicotine dependency. The real question isn't whether ZYN is safer than cigarettes, it probably is. The question is whether we're comfortable with a future where tech companies can engineer and market addictive products as long as they're marginally better than the worst alternative. When the law kills your electric car dealership. Hashtag script. This is what happens when geopolitics meets the electric vehicle market, and it's about to leave thousands of dealership owners holding the bag. Polestar, the premium EV brand backed by Volvo and Geely, just got blocked from selling cars in the United States starting next year. The reason? The federal government denied a critical authorization that would have exempted the company from sweeping restrictions on Chinese technology. Without that waiver, Polestar can't operate legally in America, and dealers who bet their businesses on the brand are now facing financial ruin. Here's the business reality: Polestar dealers made significant investments in inventory, infrastructure, and staff training based on the assumption they'd have a functioning dealership network. Some of these dealers are independent operators who took real financial risks. Now they're caught in a policy crossfire that has nothing to do with the actual quality of their cars or their business practices. The federal government's concern centers on Chinese ownership and the potential integration of Chinese-developed technology into vehicles sold domestically, part of a broader effort to restrict Beijing's influence over critical infrastructure and data collection. What makes this story significant beyond just one car brand is what it reveals about how AI and tech policy is reshaping entire industries. We're entering an era where regulatory decisions about foreign technology can instantly destroy business models that seemed perfectly legitimate months earlier. This isn't just about cars, it's a preview of how governments worldwide will increasingly weaponize tech restrictions, creating winners and losers based on geopolitical alignment rather than market competition. For entrepreneurs and investors, the message is clear: regulatory risk tied to national security concerns is now as important as any traditional business metric. The only AI glossary you'll need this year. Hashtag AI glossary commentary script. If you've tried reading about artificial intelligence lately and felt like you needed a translator just to understand the translator, you're not alone. The AI explosion of the past few years has created an entirely new vocabulary that's become impossible to ignore, and honestly, it's gotten out of hand. We're drowning in acronyms and jargon that even tech insiders struggle to keep straight. That's why someone finally did what should have been done months ago: compile a comprehensive glossary of the terms you actually need to know to understand what's happening in this space right now. Here's why this matters: AI has moved from being a niche topic for researchers and engineers into mainstream conversation, but the language barrier has created a real problem. When companies throw around terms like fine-tuning, hallucination, and prompt engineering, most people have no idea what's actually being discussed. This glossary addresses that gap directly. It's not just about defining words, it's about democratizing understanding. When the general public can actually comprehend what technologists are talking about, we get better informed consumers, more thoughtful regulation, and healthier public discourse around these tools that are reshaping everything. The broader context here is that we're at an inflection point where AI literacy is becoming as important as basic digital literacy was 15 years ago. Companies are racing to deploy these systems everywhere, from customer service to creative tools to medical diagnostics, and the terminology keeps evolving faster than most people can keep up. Having a shared vocabulary isn't just convenient, it's essential infrastructure for a society trying to grapple with transformative technology. Without it, we're essentially having a conversation where half the participants don't understand the language, and that's a recipe for miscommunication, misinformation, and poor decision-making at every level. The browser wars aren't about search anymore. Here are the best alternatives to Chrome and Safari. #Browser Wars 2026, why Chrome's dominance is finally cracking. The browser you use might seem like a small choice, but it's actually become one of the most consequential decisions you make online. For over a decade, Chrome has dominated the market with an iron fist, but something remarkable is happening right now. Users are finally abandoning ship in meaningful numbers. The browser wars have fundamentally shifted, and it's not about search rankings anymore. It's about privacy, performance, and who controls your digital life. Companies are betting billions that users are fed up with surveillance capitalism, and they might actually be right. Here's the thing that changed: Chrome became bloated. Google turned it into a data harvesting machine that slows down your computer while tracking every move you make. Meanwhile, alternatives like Firefox, Arc, and Brave have spent years perfecting what a modern browser should actually do: be fast, respect your privacy, and get out of your way. Some of these challengers are backed by serious venture capital, others by passionate open-source communities, and a few by companies genuinely tired of Google's monopoly. The technical gap between Chrome and its competitors has essentially vanished, which means the only thing keeping people loyal is habit. What makes this moment genuinely significant is what it reveals about the broader tech landscape. We're watching the same pattern repeat across platforms. Users are finally willing to switch when alternatives become viable. This isn't just about browsers, it's about whether any single company can maintain unchecked power over our digital infrastructure. If Chrome's dominance can crack, so can anything else. The real question isn't which browser you should use, it's whether you're ready to take back control of your own data. Thanks for staying updated with Neural Brief. Hit subscribe and enable notifications so you never miss tomorrow's biggest AI breakthroughs. See you next time.